All right, guys, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, T.
I'm Tasha.
All right, and welcome to the Tee and podcast. So, babe, what are we doing today?
We are doing a reaction to Jordan Peterson giving relationship advice.
All right, who is this guy, Jordan Peterson?
He is a professor. He is a speaker. He is just a really intelligent guy. And I started listening to him about 3 months ago.
Okay, right.
And he really makes you think. And so I wanted to do a reaction to this to see what he had to say about relationships.
Okay, have you heard this already?
No, I haven't.
Okay, cool. All right, let's go ahead and check him out. See what he's got to say.
Strange.
So, what advice can you give to people who are looking to have a strong and meaningful and lasting relationship with someone?
Well, the first thing is to decide if that is really what you want.
Is that fair, do you think, to say, I want to be single forever? Do you think that's realistic or fair assessment of oneself?
If that's what you want.
I think that that's, for most people, a pathway to insanity.
Yeah.
You know,
Whoa,
Wow. Wow. Interesting.
All right, let's hear his rationale first.
the psychoanalysts used to think that, and we all think this way in some ways, that you're sane because you're well put together. Your psyche is well structured, right? It's internal, somehow inside your head. And there's some truth in that, but here's a more accurate viewpoint, I think. You outsource most of your sanity because it's too complicated. And so what you do is your parents raise you to be vaguely acceptable to other people. And then you're surrounded by other people your whole life. And then every time you go off the rails a little bit, even just a little bit, people signal to you. Like you make a joke, it's not that funny, and people don't laugh. And you think, oh, well, I should probably rethink my sense of humor a little bit or pay more attention. Or you tell a rambling story and you notice that everyone's like lost in the distance. And so if you're civilized enough so that people don't shun you and you have people around you, then they're going to be always telling you how to not be too insane. Well, if you're alone, you drift.
Right.
You drift, and you'll drift in the direction of your biggest weakness. And so, there are some people, maybe they're introverted and disagreeable. They're not cut out for a lot of social contact. But we're social animals, man, right to the core.
Sure.
And it's a suboptimal solution for the vast majority of people. I think that people are having a harder time finding, like, let's call them more permanent relationships, is because it's become increasingly easy to have fleeting, casual, sexual relationships. I mean, Tinder is a revolution, right? It's a revolution in sexual behavior, and it's certainly not obvious that it's
Is it a social thing? Is it just technology? Is this what people want to be doing? Because you think the
It's
fleeting,
easier.
yeah,
in some ways.
but
it's easier.
the technology has enabled this fleeting sexual activity.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. And that's,
But-
we don't want to underestimate how radical a technology that is. That's especially for men.
So, what do you think? What do you think about what he said so far?
It's very interesting, and I think of the manosphere and some of the conversations that we've had about being single. And when you hear some of the comments, and we've had this conversation, I can tell some of the guys aren't around a lot of people. Like, they try to make it seem like they're like a upper echelon person or a high value guy, but the way they speak about women, you can tell they
haven't had a lot of experience with women.
That, and they're not around a lot of people, and there's no one in their lives actually telling them the truth. And so in this sphere, some part of the manosphere where the guys are just telling them what they want to hear, and I'm gonna be single because women are this, that, and the third, it creates that delusion that some guys have. And we've had this conversation. I was like, there's no one telling these people, these guys, the truth.
Right.
And there are some women like
Yeah,
that.
right. And you know what? And I think that we came to the conclusion that both men and women can be delusional when it comes to certain things. One thing I will say that I disagree upon is that I believe that people should get reference experiences. You should date, as many people as you can to kind of find out what you like and what you don't like, so that when you do engage in a commitment such as marriage, you're not in a position of where you didn't know what you were signing up for. But in his case of people not being able to be alone, I disagree, because I think if you don't want marriage, if you don't want a committed relationship, if you don't want those things, that's perfectly fine. And you should be upfront with the person that you're dealing with, because there's a lot of women out there that don't want that as well.
So he's not saying marriage. He's saying being
just
alone,
interpersonal relationships?
just not having relationships with people in general.
Oh, okay.
And so he's not like saying, oh, you should get married and so you can be a sane person. He's saying
You
basically
should be around people.
Develop healthy relationships with the opposite sex.
Okay.
And it's okay to be in long-term relationships. But he's talking about fleeting relationships, having multiple not even relationships, with
casual
yeah
hookups.
And
okay.
so when I see this because we had this conversation, I was like, there's no one around to tell this person the truth.
Yeah.
And that's very dangerous. And so your concept or your frame of mind is not logical, even though they might say, I'm a logical thinker, I'm this, that, and the third.
Right.
But there's no one in your real life telling you the truth, or even a long-term relationship with someone that is keeping you
grounded.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And so if you have these Tinder or Instagram relationships, it could be unstable. And I think that's what he's saying. And I see a lot of instability in some of these thought processes that some people have.
Okay.
You know, there's a sense of delusion there.
Right.
And so I wouldn't disagree with him. I actually agree with him. He's not saying, oh, you should get married. He's saying long-term relationships with people in general.
Just people in general.
You know?
Okay. Right. All right.
I do feel that deep down that all these people, men and women alike, are always longing for something more meaningful.
Well, I think that that's generally the case. I mean, you know, part of the reason for a relationship is sexual contact, obviously. Mm-hmm. Well, that's that you don't necessarily need a relationship for that. But that's not the reason to be with someone. The reason to be with someone, when there's a lot of them. So one is, well, kids who have two parents do far better, period. The data on that is crystal clear. It doesn't mean that there aren't many single parents who struggle to do a wonderful job. Yeah. That's not the same thing. It's an average issue. So you need, plus, it's a lot of work to have kids. You know, you kind of need to divide up the labor, especially in the first year or two, you know, because the woman is completely overwhelmed in the first year, and she needs somebody around to take care of her while she's taking care of the kid, fundamentally, or at least that's the way it looks to me. So there's that. You need a stable basis for children, and it takes them a long time to mature, and they need to learn that relationships are trustworthy, right? Mm. So there's utility and stability there. But then also, you kind of want to tangle your life together with someone, you know, because you have someone well, it's like two ropes that are tangled together. It's stronger, especially during times of weakness. And you have two brains instead of one, and that actually turns out to be really helpful when things are complicated. And it builds a solidity into your life and a reality into your life to have someone who's along with you on this very long voyage. And so I think that deepens your life in a way that isn't really possible with fragmentary relationships as a single person.
Definitely.
And then there's more to it than that. It's like, I think of wrestling. There's this scene in the Old Testament where Jacob wrestles with an angel. He's wrestling with God, actually, which is quite an interesting. That's what Israel means, right? Wrestling with God. Yeah, that just blew me away when I learned it. It's so
Is that true?
The true people of
Hebrew?
Israel are those who wrestle with God.
Wrestle
Yeah,
with
it's
God.
not believe exactly. It's a whole different thing, man. It's a whole different thing. And
Isn't
so,
it like fear from God? What it means? That's what I thought.
well, from the work I did in the last couple of months looking at this, and I looked into it quite deeply, it does mean wrestling, essentially. And it does derive from that scene in the Old Testament where Jacob wrestles with God. That's when he gets the name Israel. And his hip is dislocated, right? Permanently. He has a permanent limp after that. It's no joke. But I think of marriage the same way. Like people think, well, they lived happily ever after. It's like, that's not what you want in a marriage.
Yeah.
You want someone to contend with, because you learn through that wrestling, like you learn where you're an idiot and where you should stop being and vice versa. So that's the spiritual aspect of marriage. It's the fact that you have to contend with someone under all sorts of circumstances, theoretically is what would you say? It's a manner of promoting psychological, or you could say spiritual growth. And it's genuine. That's why marriage is a sacrament in most human communities, right? It's stamped both by the state and by the sacred authorities.
All right.
Very interesting.
So I do feel kind of mixed on that. I get what he's saying. I get where he's coming from as far as having to work with your partner. You have growing pains. There's certain things that you learn about your partner and your partner learns about you. Y'all might have conflict, but ultimately after you resolve it, you're stronger. One thing that I see and have seen while we've been doing these videos and talking to men and women is how men always talk about how they constantly have to do battle with their partner. And that was something that I experienced while I was dating, was constantly having to go to war after you come home from work or after you're doing something. And it's like a raging battle 24/7.
So I don't think that's what he means.
Oh no, I know that's not what he means,
Okay.
but I know that where he's coming from and what he's talking about is it's healthy, because even when we argue, I tell you to don't bottle it up, don't hold it up. If you have an issue, let me know. We can work it out. We can sort it out.
Right.
But what I know from what I hear is from a lot of people that are in unhealthy relationships, and what I've experienced in an unhealthy relationship, which is constant fighting and there's no growth beyond that.
Right. And what I say for what I've learned in marriage so far is you've made me a better person. Like, there were things that I was doing that I was completely unaware of. And you brought it to my attention, and like a light bulb went off. Like, oh my God, no one ever told me this. And I've been going around, doing certain things. And that's a healthy thing for you to love me enough to tell me, hey, this is not right. You shouldn't do this. Or we can have conversations about certain things. And that's helped me to grow. And so I think that's what he's saying, because there's some people that don't have anyone in their lives that care about them enough to say, hey, you shouldn't do this. Because sometimes when you bring those things to my attention, I might be like, no, that ain't right. or something like that. Yeah. And you're like, boom, boom, boom. And I know it's coming from a place from love.
Absolutely.
And so that helps you to grow. It helps you to become a better person.
Yeah.
But imagine not having that and continuously going through life thinking something that
we hear it all the time, because
that is okay.
Right. Well, we hear it all the time because a lot of times what we hear is women, they end up in a relationship with a guy, and then afterwards they go and date another guy who's exactly like the previous one, who was in they were in a bad situation. So it's like you're going from guy to guy to guy and going into bad situations. Whereas men, and this is where it's different, men who are in relationships, and we hear this all the time with women who say, me and so-and-so, we broke up, and after we broke up, he went off and got married. Because y'all really do tell, hey, you need to wear this, or buy this cologne, or you need to do this because it'll make you look sharp, and and you know, and sometimes women will say things like, I don't want to do too much, or I don't want to do wife duties for him, because then I feel like I'm preparing him for the next woman.
Ooh.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, I'm not going to do this until he puts a ring on my finger, or until we get married. And I will say, like from me, my dating experiences, they really have helped me, shaped me to become a better man, because those women have prepared me for you. But anyway, let's continue to go. Thanks, y'all.
Because it's not just a physiological union. That's what animals do. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with the physiological union, but it has to be placed in the context of everything else a human being is. And I do think it's dreadful for people not to have that. And
do you think it's hard, it's become harder for people to have meaningful, lasting relationships, or has it always been this hard? I feel like I thank God that I'm not dating now, because I feel like it seems like it's miserable out there right now.
Well, it's hard.
Try to meet people.
It is hard although, you know, it's easier to meet people because there's more ways of meeting them.
Right.
But the ways of meeting them are more shallow. In my clinical practice, I would say that the rise of the internet dating option has actually overall been good for people who are looking for a partner. Now, there is some speculation and some evidence that it lowers the transaction price of separation and divorce. You know, because one of the reasons you don't separate or you don't get divorced is like, well, you're going to find someone else. And if it's easier to find someone else, then perhaps you're more tempted to sever the relationship. So maybe you lose in one place where you gain in the other. But I think there are different kinds of hard that it is. You know, it's hard for couples to figure out how to manage two careers. It's hard for women to figure out how to get educated and get their career launched at the same time that they're finding a partner and having kids. Because women have this tight time frame, you know. I mean, they've got to get a lot done by the time they're mid-30s for sure. And so it's not much time, you know. It's like 15 years really from the time you're an adult. You better get at it. It's not very long.
Right.
So I think there are new challenges that have arisen that weren't there for previous generations. But previous generations had it hard in other ways.
That's very true, yeah. Like dying
Like they
at
died,
50.
yeah. Or in childbirth,
yeah.
for example.
I feel like people also need to like understand how to make a relationship work. Like it's not just magic. You need to kind of put in the work to make it work.
It's hard.
You need
It's
to put
challenging.
in effort and compromise a lot of times on, like if you live by yourself, you can do everything the way you would want.
Yeah.
If you live with someone else, then there's compromises to make.
Yes.
But in the long picture, it's better for you.
Well, that's it. That's it. There's sacrifices to be made in the short term.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, people have to. The effort issue is like, well, when you're in love with someone, you're going to organize your schedule and make them a priority. And, you know, that's in some ways a fleeting state, although it's not necessarily as fleeting as people think it is, but whatever. It's obviously a priority. And then you get married and, you know, you kind of get accustomed to having each other around, and then everything else is more important and the relationship drifts to the bottom. And then people get dissatisfied and they start looking for excitement and adventure otherwise. Well, you can't do that. You have to prioritize the relationship. Like my observation clinically has been for a couple to maintain their relationship without it deteriorating, they have to spend 90 minutes a week together talking about their lives, about how the house is run, about what they've all been doing to keep their stories caught up, right?
That's not really even that much.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not that much.
Yeah.
But and which is a good thing. You can actually do it. And then they need to spend at least one time having a date. And 2 is better. 1 is necessary. 2 is better. You can't aim for a lot more than that because, you know, life is very busy. And if it's going to be sustainable, it has to be realistic. But they need to make time for each other twice a week and talk in a non-romantic way, just practically about the domestic economy and about everything that's going on. And that keeps people tied to each other and updated. And so that's sort of your minimal commitment level if you don't want things to.
I really, it's almost anything.
To deteriorate.
Okay.
I
there you go.
love that, and we talk all the time, like what needs to be done around the house, or what I'm doing, or what you're doing, and we come together. It's like an unofficial family meeting,
Yeah,
you know.
I tell you about my day all the time.
Yeah, but not just your day,
Yeah.
but like what we need to do around the house, or like what projects we need to do, or
Oh yeah,
you know, if you gonna fix it, or we gonna pay for somebody to fix
Ugh.
it, and
I
you
ain't paying
know,
for nobody to fix nothing.
are you learning how to fix it? You know, but definitely having that level of communication there is very important, and it feels like we're a team.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
but that's how it should feel. When you're with the right person, guy or girl, you should feel like a team.
Mhm.
And that was always something that I've felt when I was in a relationship was, am I on a team with this person? Is
Mhm.
this person, do they have my best interest?
Yeah.
Does it feel like we're working towards a goal?
Oh,
Or does this
definitely.
person feel, or is this person, self-motivated or
Mhm.
something? And that just lets me know if I want to continue to be with this person,
Yeah.
because if you don't feel that, then nah, keep it moving.
But also, not having to do everything on your own. Now, I know that we've had the conversation of what are the perks or what are the benefits of being married. And a lot of people just don't know because they never seen it. But not having to shoulder the burden of everything by yourself. Although, yes, you can do it, but to have that person that you know has your back, to be like, oh, I
Absolutely.
got it.
Absolutely. It
You
feels
know,
good to have
yeah,
somebody have your back.
because it could be like very tiring and very exhausted. I remember
Life is rough, mentally and physically.
definitely. So, just to have somebody to talk to, you know, relieve some of that burden. And I know men can cook, men can clean, men can do a lot of things, but I know it sometimes will feel nice to have somebody to take care of you, to cook you a dinner, and the kitchen still be clean, and have wash your
Yeah.
clothes that smell good, and rub your head, and
Right,
all
exactly.
that
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
the
stuff.
best.
So,
There's nothing like it. When you
and
get off work and there's a nice meal for you and you get a head rub and somebody, give you some compliments, tell you how good you smell, and yeah, that's the
and
best.
vice versa
Shit.
with women. Like, I
Yeah.
know there is a movement today of I could do it by myself. I don't need a man. I want
Yeah,
a
you don't
man.
want to do it by yourself.
But there was this comment on the Nextdoor app, because I'd be looking on the Nextdoor app to see what's be going on. And this girl, she said she had got into an accident, and she felt some type of way because there was no one in her life that could check on her. And so she came to the Nextdoor app to express that sadness of, there was no one she could call.
Yeah.
She had to call an Uber, so there was not her mom, not her siblings, or because I don't know what happened to her family, but not one person or a boyfriend or a husband to be like, are you okay? Like, are you okay? Let me hug you, just to relieve that
Yeah.
stress, even though she was okay. And I was watching Love is Blind. Is that the
Yeah.
show on Netflix? Where one of the guys, he said he came on the show because he had got stabbed, and he was in the ICU for days, and there was no one there, like, relationship wise, to check on him. He was in there by himself. And so, like, people really underestimate having someone that really has your back.
Right. Well, it goes back to what I was saying before. Life can be stressful, mentally and physically, and a lot of times, such as the case in the Love Is Blind, got a case where the guy was stabbed in an ICU. People develop that fear of dying alone.
Yep.
And so that's
And it can happen to
that-
men
that's-
too.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people say it
right.
about
Well, that's
women,
that's
but it
but
can.
no. Well, that's what happened with him. But the only catch to that is that the fear of dying alone is a wrong reason to get involved into a relationship.
True. So
But
we can talk about that
we'll have to
later.
make that in another video. But anyway, this was a very interesting conversation. You know, I don't. Yeah, he was a cool guy. Yeah.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah,
I
he's a cool
think
guy.
you should listen to him more. He really makes your gears turn and makes you think about things in a way that you normally wouldn't think about them. So I really enjoy his thoughts. I enjoy his commentary. And if you do as well, let us know in the comment section down below. You don't have to agree with everything he said.
Yeah,
or
if you
we
don't agree,
said.
just let us know in the
You
comment section.
I mean, it's cool. Like, I think part of the problem, too, in this sphere is that people feel like we have to all have the same mindset. But this is about having conversation and to improve our relationships. And we do understand that marriage isn't for everyone. However, you know, we married and
It's for us.
it's for us.
Yeah, exactly.
And let us know if it's for you too.
Yeah. So subscribe to the channel, guys. Like this video, and we will see you next time. Peace.